The last few months have been full of ups and downs. Before Christmas, I bought a CNC machine, but I've been having some issues with getting it up and running properly, so I'll have to wait on making a video for that. At the start of the new year, I got a pretty decent raise at work, so I finally pulled the trigger and sold my car to buy a truck. Anyone who knows me knows this has been a dream of mine for a long time now. Unfortunately, the bad news is that my sister passed away just a few days after the new year, after a multi-year battle with breast cancer. We're doing okay despite the huge loss, but now we have to work on getting all her property dealt with, and bills paid and accounts closed and everything else that comes along with that. We're already finding that a lot of her stuff is worth keeping instead of throwing away, but isn't going to be directly used by us and isn't worth the time of trying to sell it. So to help with storing these things, I'm going to build a storage rack that's designed to fit these 27-gallon storage totes that are sold by Menards. The vertical 2x4s are green treated since they'll be in contact with the concrete floor, but the shelf boxes are not treated. I cut the green treated 2x4s to length and then set them over in the space where the shelves will go. And I used an offcut from the green treated 2x4s to make a 1.5 inch cut that will transfer all of the weight of the first shelf to the floor. This will make more sense once I put the first shelf box in place. The boxes are made of untreated 2x4s, but I did reuse some of the treated 2x4s to save on material. I even used some leftover cedar 2x4s from when I built my fence last summer. Once all the shelf boxes were assembled, I just needed to cut the shelf surface to size. I'm using RTD plywood that comes in 2x8 sheets. These were much cheaper than nicer quality plywood, and I only needed to cut them to length using a circular saw and track. Now that all the components are made, I can start the assembly process. I set the first shelf box on the floor, and then propped it up on the vertical treated 2x4s so that the box would rest on that small offcut. This is what transfers the shelf weight to the floor. I screwed the shelf box to the vertical supports and then added a sheet of plywood on top, screwing it down. Since there needs to be 16 inches of vertical space between shelves, I cut some 2x4s to 16 inches and screwed them to the vertical supports. This makes placing the next shelf box super easy and also once again transfers the shelf weight downward, making things really strong. I eventually figured I'd better push the shelving up against the wall before it got prohibitively heavy, and the assembly process continued after that until the entire shelf was done. There were a few spots where I failed to push the shelf box down enough to rest on the support beneath, so I had to go back and loosen some screws and push things into place. Reversing a clamp was particularly helpful for holding it in place until I refastened the screws. This adjustment then had to be transferred upwards to keep all the parts in contact with each other. The totes fit side by side with just a little space to spare. The top shelf doesn't quite have the clearance to allow for more totes, so I'll probably use that space for larger objects instead. It's going to take a while to fill up all 12 totes for storage, so I'm not going to show you that here, but it's good to know that I have the space available if needed.